supposed to live long enough to see his little girl in a white dress, to walk her down the aisle with pride, and to hit that stage one last time with that legendary smile everyone remembers. But instead, Malcolm-Jamal Warner's story ended in cold, suffocating silence. A silence so deep it felt like it would never break until today. That silence just got shattered in the most explosive way by something nobody saw coming. It all started with a trembling voice, a grieving mother, and a hidden USB drive that was never meant to be found. Pamela Warner didn't show up as a star. She stepped forward as a mother carrying a truth so heavy it could crush anyone. Eyes swollen from years of tears, hands shaking like they were gripping raw electricity, she held the evidence that could flip the whole narrative on its head. Her voice broke, but her words cut sharp. And in that moment, a man once treated like he could never be touched was suddenly in cuffs. Today, Bill Cosby isn't strolling free. He's standing under the harshest spotlight of his life, and suddenly, whispers about Malcolm's death being just an accident aren't whispers anymore. They're accusations. The room went still as Pamela's tear-soaked confession spilled out. No mother should ever have to speak words like these. He didn't drown. He was drowned by power, by silence, and by the same machine that protects predators while burying the truth. The documents, verified, the videos, unshakable proof. The pain in her voice, that was the kind of truth you can't fake. Inside that USB, an unseen folder, a gut punch of a final video, and one ice-cold memo that read, "Let the water wash it away." They thought they could erase Malcolm like he was just a name in a file, but they didn't count on the fire blazing in his mother's heart. Now, the very system that tried to bury this story is splitting open for the world to see. This isn't just a scandal, it's heartbreak armed with a battle cry, a storm that's only just begun. Cosby's arrest? That's just the first chapter, because Malcolm's final message was never meant to be quiet. He didn't just leave memories, he left a mission so fierce it's now roaring through every phone, every TV, every single screen in the country. Nobody saw this storm building until it broke. Outside the Los Angeles federal courthouse, the streets were a blur of flashing cameras and shouting reporters, elbows flying past barricades while fans stood crying in the crowd. Then, a black SUV rolled up slow, the air thick enough to choke on, and the door swung open. Bill Cosby stepped out, face frozen, eyes cold, surrounded by federal agents gripping his arms. This wasn't some Hollywood script. This wasn't a nightmare you could wake up from. It was real. And in that moment, every whisper that had lived in shadow, every rumor, every online thread, every secret conversation suddenly had a face, a name, and a headline. People never believed it would reach this point. Not until Pamela Warner ripped the truth wide open. "He killed my son." Her voice wasn't polished for cameras. It was raw, cracked, and burning with the kind of grief that turns into a weapon. She wasn't out here to settle scores. She was out here to drag justice out of hiding. Not just for Malcolm, but for every single person silenced behind Hollywood's fake smiles and contracts built to shut mouths. And now that silence, gone, smashed into dust. The world remembered Malcolm-Jamal Warner as the pulse of a generation. The kid millions watched grow into Theo Huxtable, a man whose laugh could fill living rooms coast to coast. But on July 20th, 2025, that laugh was silenced. The official report said he drowned during a calm vacation in Costa Rica, but that's not the truth anymore, not even close. They said he took a quiet walk on the beach. No struggle, no witnesses, no answers. Case closed. At least, that's what they wanted people to think. But mothers don't forget. Not the sound in their child's voice during that last call. Not the unease tucked between his words. Not the sentence that still slices through her heart. "If something happens to me, Mom, tell the world I wasn't lying." From that day on, Pamela Warner never moved on. She couldn't, because she knew deep down the official story was a lie from the very start. Then one day, hidden deep in the lining of Malcolm's old winter coat, she found it. A sealed envelope, stitched into the fabric like someone was hiding a treasure too dangerous to be seen. Inside, a USB drive. Across it, in Malcolm's own handwriting, 5 bone-chilling words. "In case something happens to me." Her fingers trembled as she slid it into her laptop. The files loaded. and her world collapsed in an instant. It wasn't just data, it was a digital graveyard of secrets, confidential memos, late-night call logs, hushed recordings, wire transfers that looked like bribes, and airtight NDAs signed by names so powerful they could crush anyone who spoke against them. But buried inside all that darkness was one ominous folder, its title sounding like it belonged in a spy thriller. Shadow Network. She opened it, and in document after document, in transcript after transcript, one name kept popping up, circled, highlighted, repeated over and over like a warning siren: Bill Cosby. At first, Pamela couldn't see the link. Why would a man once celebrated as America's TV father be tied to her son's death? Then, she found the video. Not a performance, not an interview. This was raw, unfiltered Malcolm, alone, eyes tired, skin pale, voice heavy with dread. "If you're watching this," he said, "then I didn't make it, or someone made sure I wouldn't." He spoke about a hidden machine, silent, ruthless, designed not just to hide crimes, but to erase the people who knew too much. Then came the sentence that would haunt her forever. "They don't just silence you, they erase you. They don't stop at taking your life, they rewrite it so perfectly nobody even thinks to question what really happened." Pamela collapsed to her knees, crushed by the weight of what she'd just heard. In that instant, she knew this wasn't some vacation tragedy. Her son had been targeted and erased. Now she was holding the proof, the smoking gun that could burn the whole system down. She didn't wait. She carried that USB, every memo, every wire transfer, every last recording, straight to the Department of Justice. Weeks went by. No calls, no updates, nothing but a suffocating silence. Then, late one night, her phone lit up. Unknown number. One short text: "Check the news." Her stomach dropped as she grabbed the remote. Every channel, every station was screaming the same headline in bold red. The DOJ had just confirmed a full-scale federal investigation into Malcolm-Jamal Warner's death. But the headline that shook the internet to its core: Bill Cosby under official investigation in connection to Warner case. Within 48 hours, a federal warrant was issued. By 72 hours, Bill Cosby was in custody. Pamela sat frozen in her living room, eyes locked on the TV. No celebration, no victory speech, just silent tears sliding down her face. After years of being ignored, her son's truth was finally being heard. Outside the courthouse, the streets became a living memorial, candles flickering in the night, murals painted on brick walls, posters lifted high. One sign hit harder than anything else: he didn't drown, he was drowned. The USB's contents had started to leak. Short clips from Malcolm's final video exploding across social media like wildfire. And with those clips came the whistleblowers, ex-studio crew members, legal insiders, even a late-night producer willing to risk everything. One leaked voicemail sent a shiver through the country. "We were told not to touch his footage. We were told to let it disappear." But he knew he had proof, and he was getting ready to go public. Pamela Warner was no longer just a grieving mother. She had become the unshakable face of a movement. Every headline carried her name. Every interview repeated her words. And one sentence became a battle cry that echoed across the nation: he didn't just die, he was erased. And I will not stop until the world knows who did it. And the world was locked in, watching every second, because the same Hollywood machine that used to bury victims' voices was now taking direct hits from all sides. At the center of this firestorm, the man once praised as America's dad, now being branded with a title far darker, one that no amount of PR spin could erase. Cosby's legal team was in freefall, attorneys scrambling, PR firms cutting reporters off mid-question, high-powered execs disappearing into silence. Entire social media accounts vanished overnight, but the damage was already done. The files were everywhere. The truth was out. And the fortress that had shielded predators for decades had just been cracked wide open by nothing more than a mother's refusal to back down. They thought killing the messenger would bury the message, but Pamela didn't just keep her son's truth alive, she turned it into a blazing firestorm that ripped through their empire of lies. Bill Cosby might have been behind bars, but Malcolm's story was still unfolding, and it was getting uglier by the hour. They had counted on Pamela fading into the background, on public outrage fizzling out like another fleeting headline. But this wasn't noise, this was a scream, a mother's scream. And that sound was shaking the very walls of Hollywood's golden towers. And beneath that scream sat evidence so explosive it could take down entire kingdoms. Cosby's arrest sent shockwaves through the industry, but that was just the prelude. Because when the DOJ pried open the first vault of what's now called the Warner Archive, the world finally saw the mask slip. And what stood behind it was monstrous. It all began with one memo, dated June 18, 2025, just 48 hours before Malcolm's death, stamped in bold, confidential, internal use only. The subject line, crisis containment, Warner situation escalating. Inside that memo was a blueprint for destruction, executives spelling out, step by step, exactly how to crush Malcolm's credibility before he could speak a single word in public. Then came the line that made Pamela's stomach turn to ice: if containment fails. Right under it, cold, clinical, and inhuman, redirect through tragedy. The ocean remains a viable optic. This wasn't poetic. This wasn't a metaphor. It was a kill order, disguised in the sterile language of corporate strategy. And that memo, it was only the beginning. The Warner Archive held far more than paperwork. It was loaded with audio proof, dozens of calls, private meetings, late-night voice notes. And there he was, Malcolm himself, unknowingly recording the pieces of his own endgame. In one file, a network executive's voice wavered with fear. He's not a kid anymore. He's smart. He's tracking patterns. If he releases what he has, we are all in trouble. Another voice slid in, smooth, cold, final. Then let's make sure he doesn't. Then came Fragment 7, the footage that broke Pamela completely. A hidden camera feed, the image shaky, the lighting dim, the pixels smeared with static. But there was no mistaking him. It was Malcolm, alone, in his home office, eyes locked on his computer screen, scrolling through files like each one was heavier than the last. He looked straight into the webcam, exhaled like the air itself was too heavy. I shouldn't be recording this, but if I don't, no one will believe it, not even my mom. He picked up a small voice recorder, his tone dropping into a whisper that could freeze blood. They called me tonight. They told me I'm risking everything. But what am I supposed to do? Stay quiet? Let them win? Then, 3 sharp knocks at the door. Malcolm froze. His eyes darted to the screen. Then he reached forward, switched off the camera. The feed went black. Pamela would later say, that was the last time she ever saw her son alive. When that clip hit the internet, it didn't just trend, it detonated. Outrage, grief, shock, and a gut-wrenching awareness that no one had truly seen the weight Malcolm had been carrying. Behind every red carpet smile was a man being hunted in plain sight. Within 2 days, justice for Malcolm had passed 10 million posts, turning into a tidal wave of fury. Protests erupted from Los Angeles to New York, Atlanta to Toronto. Sunset Boulevard was spray-painted in massive blood-red letters. He didn't drown. He was silenced. Overnight, murals began to bloom across city walls, Malcolm's face immortalized alongside the words, "They erased him, we remember." Celebrities who had kept their mouths shut were suddenly speaking up. One sitcom co-star wrote online, "He told me something big was coming. I didn't listen. I should have." Another former castmate went live, tears streaming down their face. "He tried to warn us, he really did." Meanwhile, the DOJ kept digging, and what they pulled out next made everything before it look small. A file surfaced with a title so cold, it sent shivers across the country. The Silence Machine, version 2.0. Inside was a 32-page instruction manual, a blueprint on how to erase a person completely without ever touching them. Step by step, it spelled out the process. Seed a fake scandal, whisper mental health rumors, flood the news with 8 distraction stories to bury the truth, stall every FOIA request, grease the right palms at the local PD, and drop hush money settlements to keep survivors quiet. This wasn't about one man shielding Bill Cosby. This was an industrial-grade erasure machine, fueled by money, run by ruthless lawyers, enforced by raw fear. And Malcolm had hacked it wide open. He'd mapped out every moving piece. He was ready to crush the whole thing into dust. But someone made sure he never got the chance. Then came the second leak, and this time, it didn't come from the DOJ. It came from inside. One of the very networks Malcolm had named in his files received a plain, unmarked package. No name, no return address. Inside, a single hard drive. And on it, one lone folder, stamped with a name that felt like a confession, buried. What Pamela opened inside was enough to crush her all over again. Email chains, raw transcripts, and a bone-chilling risk assessment from Cosby's old PR firm. One document spelled it out with the kind of clean, calculated language that only makes it more sinister. If Warner publishes, activate mitigation protocol, monitor movements. If extraction fails, contingency in place. That word again, contingency, a boardroom polished way to say something deadly. Pamela sat there reading it 17 times, her hands gripping her son's worn sweatshirt, whispering through sobs. They planned it. My God, they planned everything. In court, Cosby's legal team tried to spin it like a bad PR headline. They sneered that the files were fake, claimed hackers had planted false evidence, dismissed it as nothing more than a smear campaign built by a grieving mother desperate for attention. But then, the voice memo dropped. Malcolm had recorded it without even realizing the mic was still on. You can hear him walking, his footsteps uneven, his breathing heavy, then his voice low and raw. They said, I have a choice. Stay quiet and live. Speak and, well, here we are. A short, bitter laugh follows. I'm not scared anymore. I'm just tired, but I won't be their silence. And then, just like that, nothing. Pamela released that clip with a single devastating caption. My son didn't drown. He was drowned by silence, by money, by monsters. The reaction was immediate, like striking a match in a room full of gasoline. The entire country was locked in. Senators were now demanding a full congressional review. And suddenly, the walls weren't just closing in on Bill Cosby. They were collapsing on the whole machine that had protected him for decades. A special counsel was appointed. Networks rushed into so-called internal investigations. Federal prosecutors made it clear. Cosby's arrest was just the opening scene in a much bigger takedown. But Pamela wasn't done, not even close. She still had one last weapon. It was a letter, Malcolm's letter. If you're reading this, it means I didn't make it. But that's okay, because I know you'll fight. And I know the truth will outlive me. I love you, Mom. Don't let them erase me. Pamela keeps that letter on her at all times. The paper is soft from wear, creased from being folded and unfolded, stained in places with tears. But its power hasn't faded for a single second. And now, in the same world where Cosby once ruled the TV screen, his mugshot is the most shared image online. He's no longer America's dad. He's inmate number XXXXX, locked in a cell, staring at a wall of charges, and something far more dangerous, the truth. The truth he spent decades trying to suffocate under layers of power and silence. Malcolm didn't live to see this day, but every file, every video, every shred of evidence he left behind made it possible. Because in the end, he wasn't just a beloved actor. He was a whistleblower, a truth teller, a son who stared straight into the darkness and refused to blink. And the mother who gave him life became the voice he was robbed of. This isn't just a scandal, it's a revolution, the first crack in the foundation of an entire silence industry. Proof that you can kill the messenger, but you will never kill the message. The courtroom that day wasn't quiet, it was suffocating. Not the kind of quiet that soothes, but the kind that pushes down on your chest until every breath feels stolen. A silence that didn't need sound to scream. Bill Cosby sat at the defense table, face frozen, shoulders stiff, boxed in by lawyers who no longer looked untouchable. Their confidence was gone. What was left was fear. Across the room, Pamela Warner stood like steel, clutching the folded letter her son had left behind. Her hands were steady. Her eyes never wavered. This wasn't just a court case. This was Judgment Day. And every camera outside was waiting to see it happen. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but truth doesn't stay locked up. Witness after witness took the stand. Former assistants, studio editors, retired execs, and their words all painted the same picture. We were told to stay silent. We were paid to forget. He knew too much, and they knew it. Then came the testimony no one saw coming. A man stepped forward, Cosby's former bodyguard. His voice shook, but his words cut through the air like glass. I was assigned to watch Malcolm, not to protect him, to track him. I didn't get why at first, but the day he died, I got a call. One sentence: stand down. It's handled. Gasps shot through the courtroom. Even the judge froze. Cosby didn't flinch. His stone mask didn't crack, because what could he possibly say now? Everything Malcolm had feared, everything he had stored away, was now being spoken aloud in front of the world, and there was no burying it again. Outside, the streets were glowing with candlelight. Photos of Malcolm lined the sidewalks. Protest signs waved in the cold night air. Some people wept. Others stood in a different kind of silence, the kind that finally carried meaning. Across the internet, millions watched the live updates roll in. Hashtags roared back to the top. # justice for Malcolm, # he didn't drown, # the machine is falling. No one was ready for what came next. Pamela had been holding back one last weapon, the second hard drive. She wasn't saving it for the courtroom. She wasn't handing it to the press. She was keeping it for the people. And this wasn't just a list of names, it was the entire machine laid bare. Surveillance footage, word-for-word transcripts from closed-door meetings, off-the-record contracts signed between networks and law enforcement, confidential files stamped in bold, do not disclose, internal only. At the center of it all, a blueprint that froze her blood. 2 words: Echo Protocol. It was the machine's ultimate insurance policy. A digital kill switch designed to wipe the reputation of any accused star and permanently erase anyone who dared to speak. Malcolm had been uncovering it piece by piece, and now the world was about to see everything, every risk he took, every breadcrumb he left behind, not for himself, but for her, for his mother. Pamela didn't flinch, she didn't filter, she didn't redact. She uploaded every file, every name, every plan, straight into the public eye. No warnings, no negotiations, no fear. The internet didn't just blow up, it imploded. Live news anchors froze mid-sentence. High-powered attorneys refused to speak on record. Corporate titans quietly stepped down in the dead of night. Entire network feeds went black without explanation. And then, the names started to fall, one by one. Careers ended overnight. Fortunes vanished. But the loudest crash, the one that rattled the entire industry, was the fall of the man who had started it all. 3 weeks after his arrest, Bill Cosby was officially charged: conspiracy, obstruction, accessory to murder. The media tried to spin their angles. Some branded it unprecedented. Others clung to the word alleged like a lifeline. But the truth was already carved in stone, in Malcolm's voice, in his files, and in the relentless fire Pamela refused to let die. Pamela never wanted fame. She never chased a spotlight. But she became a face the world could never erase. She spoke to reporters only once, just once. Holding Malcolm's photo tight against her chest, she said, "They tried to silence him, but all they did was give him a louder voice." Then she turned and walked away. No applause, no press tour, just truth. From that moment, Malcolm's legacy began to rise from the ashes. Universities built archives in his name. Advocacy groups launched with his story at their core. Across cities and continents, walls bloomed with his image. Each mural a bold reminder of the man who refused to shut his eyes to the darkness, even when it cost him everything. And this time, no one could erase him. One mural blazed with his face surrounded by painted flames, the words wrapping around it like armor: "They can kill the messenger, but not the message." A street in his hometown now bore the name Warner Way, and the folder he once labeled Shadow Network had become required study in law schools, known as the case that cracked Hollywood's golden walls wide open. But the most powerful moment came from one last video, Malcolm's final words, recorded in secret, meant only for his mother, until the day she decided the whole world deserved to hear them. It had never been released, never even been touched, hidden deep inside the second hard drive under a simple label, final.mp4. Pamela didn't open it right away. She waited until the headlines dimmed, until justice had begun to take root in the cracks of the system. Then, one quiet night, alone in her living room, she lit a single candle and pressed play. Malcolm filled the screen, tired, yes, but calm. The fear that once haunted his eyes was gone. And then he smiled. Just once. Hey, Mom, if you're watching this, then I guess it's over. Or maybe it's just beginning. He paused, took a slow breath. I didn't do this to be a hero. I did it because someone had to. You always told me to speak when it matters most. Well, this matters. He leaned in, eyes locking with the lens. They tried to drown me in silence, but I had you, and I knew you'd finish what I started. His voice caught on the last words. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry, but thank you for being the loudest voice I've ever known. The video ended. Pamela didn't cry. She closed the laptop, kissed the worn letter, and whispered into the candlelight. You were never erased. You were etched into history. And now the world remembers Malcolm, not just as a star, but as the man who refused to let the darkness win. His name is painted on walls, written in court records, and spoken in classrooms. Malcolm lives on, not as a victim, but as a symbol, a living reminder that truth, no matter how deep it's buried, will claw its way to the surface. And when it breaks through, it has the power to set the whole world on fire. Bill Cosby may still be behind bars, but the real victory wasn't his arrest. It was the shift, the awakening, the tearing down of the fortress that let him and countless others walk untouched for decades. That machine didn't just crack, it split wide open because of one son's courage and a mother's refusal to let his name fade into the dark. And make no mistake, this isn't the end. This is a warning to every predator hiding behind airtight contracts, to every executive swapping silence for profit, to every machine fueled by fear and cover-ups. Your time is up. The silence is gone. The message is deafening. Because Malcolm didn't just leave a scandal. He left a map, a blueprint for dismantling the very system that tried to erase him. And now, the world is following it step by step. If you've stayed with this story, you already know this isn't just a headline. It's a scream that rose from the grave and refused to be quiet. Malcolm-Jamal Warner didn't die in silence. He died because of silence. Because he dared to speak the truth that others only whispered. Because he refused to play their game. And now his voice is everywhere, in the streets, in the headlines, in the murals that blaze across city walls. And the man once hailed as America's dad is locked in a cell, stripped of his mask, forced to face the truth he spent his life trying to bury. But do you really think this is where it ends? The system that took Malcolm, the same machine that bought silence, buried evidence, and traded truth for contracts, it's still out there. Still breathing, still watching, still waiting to crush the next voice brave enough to speak, unless we stop it. This can't just be remembered, it has to be repeated, echoed, shouted so loud it rattles the walls of every boardroom that ever signed away justice. So don't just scroll past this. Say his name, drop number justice for Malcolm in the comments. Share this video, mirror it, repost it everywhere you can. Let the silence know we hear the truth and we're not letting it fade. If this video disappears tomorrow, you'll know why. But they can't erase all of us. So hit like if this shook you. Subscribe so you never miss the next truth they'll try to bury. Turn on notifications because what's coming next might be even darker than this. They thought killing the messenger would kill the message. But now, you're holding it. You carry it. Make them hear it. Because Malcolm didn't leave behind a goodbye, he left behind a mission. And now, it's yours. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.